Hi, this is Allison Sheridan, and welcome to another edition of Screencasts Online. Back on Screencasts Online number 560 and 565, I told you about a fantastic and yet inexpensive pixel image editor from Serif called Affinity Photo. In episode 603, I came back again and told you about some huge new capabilities that were added in version 1.5 of Affinity Photo for no extra cost. Since that time, Serif came out with a version of Affinity Photo for Windows, and it shares the same back end as Affinity Photo for Mac, which means both platforms can stay in feature parity over time. The big news is that at Apple's Worldwide Developer Conference, also known as WWDC, Serif announced and demonstrated on stage Affinity Photo for iPad. I am thrilled with this announcement, especially since they said that this version shares the same back end with the Windows and Mac versions. So again, we can have full feature parity on the iPad. Since I've already told you a lot about how to use Affinity Photo, I won't be explaining every single little feature. However, the interface is dramatically different in order to accommodate fat-fingered touches and to be sensible about using the smaller screen real estate of an iPad. Affinity Photo for iPad is compatible with the iPad Air 2, the iPad released in early 2017, and all versions of the iPad Pro. The App Store will allow you to buy the app on an incompatible device, but you will not be able to run it on those devices because they don't meet the minimum specification for memory and advanced metal acceleration to run the app successfully. Make sure you check your model before you purchase. You might be asking who Affinity Photo is for. It's great for photography enthusiasts who want more maybe than the simple adjustments that Apple Photos can provide. But it also provides advanced tools for professional photographers. It also has tools for graphic artists with advanced brushes and shapes for creating artwork. Let's start taking a look at Affinity Photo for iPad.